Marina Azevedo had spent 25 years believing she was a mistake, the daughter who wasn't beautiful enough, interesting enough, worthy enough. While her younger sister glowed under camera flashes and in their mother's pride, Marina lived in the shadows of their modest apartment in Moema, surrounded by books no one else cared to read. But on one stifling Saturday afternoon, when her family sent her to a millionaire's mansion as a cruel joke, let's see his face when the ugly sister shows up instead of the pretty one, something unexpected happened. The man who opened the library doors didn't see what her family saw, and that single moment would shatter everything Marina thought she knew about herself, about love, and about the price of being seen for the first time in her life. But what happened next? No one there could have imagined. If this story moves you, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this from? Your support is what keeps this channel alive and allows us to keep bringing stories like this one, stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. Marina Azevedo woke up every day at 5:30 in the morning, not because she liked it, but because it was the only time the house was quiet. In that 3-bedroom apartment in Moema, noise was constant. Her mother, Donna Lucia Conceição, talking loudly on the phone about Isabella's photo shoots. Her younger sister, locked in her room, doing live streams for thousands of followers who adored her. Her father, Seu Renato, trying to watch the news with the volume on high to compete with the chaos around him. Marina had learned, from a very young age, that silence was the only space no one fought her for. At 25, Marina was a librarian at the community library in Capão Redondo, in the south side of São Paulo. The bus ride took 2 hours, 2.5 on heavy traffic days, but she never complained. Inside that simple building, with peeling walls and broken air conditioning, Marina was someone. Children ran up to her with shining eyes, asking for book recommendations. Teenagers no one else believed in sat in circles on Thursday afternoons to discuss poetry. Seu Carlos, the 70-year-old man who read every available newspaper, always saved the seat next to him for when Marina needed to vent. There, among dusty shelves and the smell of old pages, Marina wasn't the ugly sister. She was just Marina. And for a long time, that was enough. But at home, the story was different. Marina was the daughter who did well in school, as Donna Lucia liked to say, with a tone that made it clear that academics were a consolation prize. Isabella, 3 years younger, was the family's life project. Since she was 15, when she won a regional beauty pageant, the entire house began to revolve around her. Donna Lucia accompanied every casting, every photo shoot, every event. Seu Renato, who worked as an accountant at a small company, did overtime to pay for runway courses, beauty treatments, professional portfolios. Marina, who had earned a full scholarship to USP and never asked for a penny to invest in herself, listened in silence to conversations about Isabella's bright future while washing the dinner dishes. The thick prescription glasses Marina had worn since she was 12 were a trademark, not in a good way. "Have you ever thought about wearing contact lenses?" her mother suggested frequently, always followed by a heavy sigh. "It would improve your face so much." Marina tried once. The lenses burned, her eyes watered, and she gave up in less than a week. Donna Lucia commented in front of visitors that Marina doesn't even have the patience to fix herself up properly. From then on, Marina decided that if being ugly was the role assigned to her, then she would be the most studious, the most dedicated, the most invisible possible. She covered her body with baggy blouses and cheap fabric pants. She pulled her brown hair into a low, lifeless bun. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't try to compete. She simply disappeared. Isabella, on the other hand, was impossible to ignore. Naturally blonde, with light green eyes and a body sculpted by hours at the gym and restrictive diets, she was everything Marina wasn't. And everyone made sure to remind her of that. Too bad beauty wasn't distributed equally between the sisters, right? An aunt commented at a Sunday lunch. Marina, sitting at the end of the table, pretended not to hear. Isabella, on the other side, smiled at the phone camera she never put down, so Renato gave an awkward laugh. Donna Lucia poured more wine and changed the subject. Marina cut the piece of meat on her plate so hard that the knife scraped the bottom. No one noticed. On nights when Marina lay in bed in the room she filled with bookshelves, she wondered when, exactly, she had accepted this as truth. When did she start believing that her function in the world was to stay quiet, small, in the background? Maybe it was at 13, when Donna Lucia took Isabella to try out at a modeling agency and left Marina at home. Because these things aren't for you. Or maybe it was at the high school prom, when no boy asked her to dance, while Isabella, who didn't even go to the same school, showed up at the end of the party and became the center of attention. Marina took off her borrowed heels, sat on the curb outside the hall, and waited for her father to pick them up. Isabella came out half an hour later, surrounded by admirers. In the car, Donna Lucia asked Isabella if she'd had fun. No one asked Marina anything. Books, then, became her refuge. Marina learned that in the pages she could be anyone. She could be the fearless heroine, the mysterious woman, the character everyone loved. When she closed the book, she went back to being Marina Azevedo, the good daughter, the sister without shine. But for a few hours, while reading, she was free. And it was precisely this love for books that led her to study library science. When she got into USP, Donna Lucia commented, "At least you'll have a stable career. It's not glamorous, but you'll be able to support yourself." Marina smiled forcedly and said thank you. Deep down, she knew what her mother meant. You'll never be beautiful like Isabella, so at least be useful. During college, Marina flourished in a quiet way. She made friends who loved literature as much as she did. She participated in study groups, presented papers, was praised by professors. But whenever she came home, the armor returned. Donna Lucia and Isabella barely asked about college. Conversations revolved around fashion editorials, advertising campaigns, parties in São Paulo that Marina would never be invited to. So Renato, when he noticed his oldest daughter was too quiet, would pat her shoulder and say, "You're a good girl, Marina." And she would smile because she knew good girl was code for doesn't cause trouble. When she graduated, Marina turned down an internship offer at a prestigious library in downtown São Paulo. She chose, instead, to work in the periphery. Donna Lucia didn't understand. You could be building a real career, Marina. Why choose a place that won't take you anywhere? Marina tried to explain that she wanted to make a difference precisely where people had less access, that she wanted children like her, quiet, forgotten, invisible, to have a safe place to dream. Donna Lucia rolled her eyes. Always so stubborn. Isabella from her room yelled something about being late for a shoot. The conversation died there. Now 2 years after graduating, Marina lived in a predictable, safe routine. She woke up early. She took the crowded bus. She worked surrounded by people who respected her. She came home in the late afternoon. She had dinner in silence while the family talked about things that didn't include her. She read late into the night. She slept. She repeated. There was a silent pain in all of that, a pain Marina carried in her shoulders, in the way she walked slightly hunched, as if she wanted to take up less space. But she had convinced herself that this was the life she deserved, that some people were born to shine and others to hold the light. What Marina didn't know yet, as she arranged books in alphabetical order that hot February afternoon, was that her life was about to change, that her mother's phone would ring that night, that an absurd proposal would be made, and that, for the first time in 25 years, Marina Azevedo would have to decide whether she would continue accepting the role of invisible or dare to be seen. It was a Thursday night when Donna Lucia's phone rang. Marina was in the kitchen washing the dinner dishes, her hands submerged in warm, soapy water. She could hear the TV on in the living room, where Sir Renato was watching the news, and Isabella's voice in her room, recording another video for social media. It was an ordinary, predictable night, until Donna Lucia answered the call. "Hello? Oh, concession, it's been so long." Her mother's voice went up 3 tones, that animated tone she reserved for people she considered important. Marina kept scrubbing the plate, not paying much attention. But then she heard the name. Rodrigo Farias, the businessman. There was a pause. "Really? He's looking for a wife?" Another pause. Longer. "And he asked to meet someone from our family?" Marina turned off the faucet. The sudden silence in the kitchen made even the sounds from the living room seem amplified. Donna Lucia laughed, a high-pitched, excited laugh. Of course, Isabella is perfect, beautiful, elegant, a dream. Oh, concession, you have no idea. He's going to love meeting her." Marina dried her hands on the worn dish towel, her heart tightening without understanding why. Yes, we can arrange it. Saturday. Perfect. Thank you, dear. Kiss. Kiss." When Donna Lucia hung up, she practically ran to the living room. "Renato! Isabella! Come here now!" Sir Renato lowered the TV volume, frowning. Isabella appeared in her bedroom doorway, still holding her phone. "What is it, Mom?" "I'm in the middle of recording." Donna Lucia clasped her hands, her eyes shining in a way Marina knew well. It was the expression of someone who had just found a golden opportunity. "Rodrigo Farias wants to meet Isabella." The name hung in the air for a second. Isabella blinked, confused. "Who?" Donna Lucia rolled her eyes, impatient. "Rodrigo Farias, the businessman. Heir to Farias Tech, that huge technology company. He's in all the business magazines, Isabella. Rich, handsome, influential. And apparently he's looking for a wife." Isabella wrinkled her nose. "So what?" Donna Lucia took a step forward, as if she were about to reveal the secret of the universe. "He asked to meet you. We set up a dinner at his house in Alphaville on Saturday." Isabella let out a short, humorless laugh. "Mum, are you serious? I'm not going out with some guy just because he's rich. That's soap opera stuff." Donna Lucia opened her mouth, shocked. "Isabella, you don't understand. This man could change your life. You could have everything, mansion, travel, security. You wouldn't have to worry about campaigns or castings anymore." Isabella crossed her arms, irritated. "I like my career, Mom. I'm not going to become some bored businessman's wife just because you think it's a good idea. This is ridiculous." Donna Lucia tried to argue, but Isabella was already heading back to her room. "Forget it, Mum. I'm not going." The door slammed. Donna Lucia stood in the middle of the living room, her hands trembling, her face red with frustration. Sir Renato sighed, returning his attention to the TV. "Let her be, Lucia. The girl has her career." But Donna Lucia wasn't the type to give up easily. She stood there, her brain working at full speed, and then, as if a light bulb had turned on, she turned toward the kitchen. "Marina." The voice came low but firm. Marina, who had gone back to washing dishes in an attempt to become invisible again, froze. "Yes, Mom." Donna Lucia entered the kitchen, her eyes scanning her oldest daughter from top to bottom. The glasses, the hair carelessly pulled back, the baggy cotton blouse. "Are you free on Saturday?" Marina blinked, confused. I think so." "Why?" Donna Lucia crossed her arms, thoughtful. "Nothing, just thinking." The next morning, Donna Lucia called a family meeting. Marina was the last to arrive in the living room, still in her pajamas, her eyes swollen from sleep. Isabella was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, bored. Sir Renato was drinking coffee, clearly not understanding why he was there. "Well," Donna Lucia began, with a solemn tone that made Marina frown, "I thought a lot about Rodrigo Farias's proposal. and I think we have a solution." Isabella looked up from her phone, suspicious. "Mom, I already said I'm not going." Donna Lucia raised her hand, asking for patience. I know, but what if it wasn't you?" Silence. Isabella tilted her head, curious. "What do you mean?" Donna Lucia looked directly at Marina, and her oldest daughter's stomach churned. "What if Marina went in your place?" The room exploded in simultaneous reactions. Seu Renato choked on his coffee. Isabella let out a loud, incredulous laugh. "Are you serious?" Marina was paralyzed, unable to process what she had just heard. Donna Lucia, however, kept her face serious. "Why not? Conceição only said that Rodrigo wanted to meet one of my daughters. She didn't specify which one." Isabella was still laughing, now holding her stomach. "Mom, you're a genius. Imagine his face when Marina shows up. He's going to think it's a prank." The words cut Marina like a knife. She looked at her sister, then at her mother, hoping someone would say this was a tasteless joke. But Donna Lucia just smiled, as if she had just solved a complicated problem. "Look, Marina," she said, in a tone that tried to be gentle but came out condescending. "It doesn't hurt for you to go, right? Who knows? Maybe you'll hit it off with him. And if it doesn't work out, at least we kept our word to Conceição." Isabella wiped tears from laughing so hard. "Seriously, Mom, this is going to be hilarious. We should record his reaction." Marina felt blood rush to her face. Her hands started to tremble. For 25 years, she had swallowed humiliation, cruel comments, painful comparisons, always in silence, always accepting. But in that moment, something inside her cracked. It didn't break completely, not yet, but it cracked enough for a spark of anger, of wounded dignity to begin burning. "Okay." Marina's voice came out low but firm. Everyone stopped and looked at her, surprised. "I'll go." Donna Lucia blinked, as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. "You will?" Marina straightened her shoulders, taking off her glasses and cleaning the lenses with the hem of her blouse, just to have something to focus on other than the faces around her. "Yes, I'll go." Isabella stopped laughing, suspicious. "Marina, you know this is just a joke, right?" Marina put her glasses back on, looking directly at her sister for the first time in years. "I know." Seu Renato, uncomfortable with the tension beginning to fill the room, tried to intervene. "Marina, dear, you don't have to do this if you don't want to." But Marina was already standing. "I want to." Her voice wasn't loud, but there was something new there. Something no one in that house was used to hearing. Determination. "When's the dinner?" Donna Lucia, still processing, answered automatically. "Saturday, 8 at night, at his house in Alphaville." Marina nodded and left the room. Isabella and Donna Lucia exchanged glances, a mixture of confusion and contained amusement. "Well," Isabella said, going back to her phone, "at least it'll be funny." Donna Lucia agreed, laughing softly. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, Marina felt something completely different. It wasn't courage, not yet. It was a strange mixture of anger, shame, and a desperate desire to prove, even if just to herself, that she was more than the joke her family made of her. That night, Marina lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Her sister's words echoed in her head. "Imagine his face when Marina shows up." Marina closed her eyes, clenching her fists under the blanket. For the first time in her life, she didn't know if what she felt was a desire to disappear or to finally appear. Saturday dawned with suffocating heat, typical of February in São Paulo. Marina woke up at 6 in the morning, even though it was her day off, with her stomach churning and the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake by agreeing to go to the dinner. She lay there for a few minutes, staring at the bedroom ceiling, listening to the first sounds of the city waking up outside. Cars passing, someone shouting in the street. The muffled sound of music coming from the neighboring apartment. Everything normal. Everything the same, except her. Marina got up slowly, as if sudden movement might break the fragile courage she had built over the past 2 days. She looked at herself in the small, foggy mirror hanging on the wall next to the dresser. Lifeless brown hair falling over her shoulders, deep, dark circles, thick prescription glasses that made her eyes look smaller than they already were. She took off her glasses and brought her face closer to the mirror, trying to see herself as someone other than herself. Would Rodrigo Farias laugh in her face? Would he think it was a prank, like Isabella had said? Marina shook her head, pushing away the thoughts, and put her glasses back on. There was no point thinking about it now. At 9 in the morning, Marina took the bus to the neighborhood where Donna Rosa's salon was located, a simple place with 2 chairs, a mirror cracked at the corner, and the persistent smell of chemicals mixed with fresh coffee. Donna Rosa was a woman of about 50, short, with calloused hands and a wide smile, who had been cutting Marina's hair since she was a teenager. When Marina entered, the doorbell tinkled, and Donna Rosa looked up from the gossip magazine she was reading while waiting for her first client. "Marina, what a surprise, dear. I thought you were only coming next week." Marina forced a smile and sat in the swivel chair of synthetic leather that creaked with every movement. "Yeah, Donna Rosa, change of plans." The hairdresser grabbed a clean towel and placed it over Marina's shoulders, tying it in front. "And what will it be today? Cut? Hydration?" Marina hesitated, looking at her own reflection in the mirror ahead. I need to fix my hair. Nothing too much, just something different." Donna Rosa frowned, curious. "Different how? Are you going to some event?" Marina swallowed hard. "Something like that." She didn't want to go into details, didn't want to hear opinions or questions she didn't know how to answer. Donna Rosa, sensing the discomfort, didn't insist. "All right, dear. Let's do a blow-dry. Trim the ends and some highlights in your hair. Nothing major, but it'll bring out your face. You have a pretty face, Marina. You just need to believe it." Donna Rosa's words hung in the air as she began washing Marina's hair. The warm water ran over her scalp, and Marina closed her eyes, trying to relax. "You have a pretty face." How many times had she heard that phrase, usually followed by a "but" or a silence that said everything? "You have a pretty face, but Isabella is more striking. You have a pretty face, but you should try contact lenses. You have a pretty face, but it doesn't help if you don't take care of yourself." Donna Rosa rinsed out the shampoo and applied conditioner, massaging with firm, careful movements. "You know, Marina," she said in a softer tone, "I see a lot of people coming through here. Beautiful women. Women who think they're beautiful. Women who don't think they're anything. And you know what I've learned? That the beauty that matters most is the one we feel inside. When you feel good about yourself, it shows. People see it." Marina opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling stained by moisture. "What if I never feel good about myself?" The question came out before she could hold it back, raw and honest. Donna Rosa stopped for a second, her hands still in Marina's hair, and then smiled with an understanding sadness. "Then you'll spend your whole life waiting for others' approval. And that, my dear, is the worst prison there is." After washing, Donna Rosa dried Marina's hair with the towel and began to comb it, separating the strands. "Have you ever thought about wearing contact lenses?" Marina felt her stomach tighten. Here it came again. "I tried. I couldn't adapt." Donna Rosa nodded, without judgment. "That's okay. The glasses look good on you. They even have a certain charm, you know, an intellectual thing. Some men like that." Marina didn't respond. She didn't believe it. She never had. The blow-dry took almost an hour. Donna Rosa worked patiently, wrapping the strands around the dryer, running the flat iron to smooth the ends, applying a light serum that made Marina's hair shine in a way she hadn't seen in years. When she finished, Donna Rosa turned the chair so Marina could see herself in the mirror. "There. What do you think?" Marina blinked, surprised. The brown hair, previously lifeless and carelessly thrown back, now fell softly over her shoulders, with the ends slightly curved inward. The cut had removed the weight of the dry ends, and the golden highlights Donna Rosa had applied gave a subtle shine when the light hit. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. Marina was still Marina, but there was something different, something almost imperceptible. She looked cared for. She looked like someone had taken time with her. "It looks beautiful," Marina murmured, lightly touching her hair. Donna Rosa smiled, satisfied. "I told you. You just needed a little push." Marina paid the 25 reais for the service, almost half of what she had saved that month, and left the salon with her hair still smelling like keratin and a mix of nervousness and something that, if she dared to name it, might be hope. Back at the apartment, Marina locked herself in her room and opened the small two-door wardrobe. She ran her eyes over the hanging clothes, baggy blouses, cheap fabric pants, plain work dresses. Nothing there seemed appropriate for dinner at a millionaire's house. She didn't have money to buy something new. Most of her salary went to helping with household bills and paying for transportation. All that remained was the navy blue dress she had bought 2 years ago, on sale downtown and worn only once, at a distant cousin's wedding. Marina took the dress off the hanger and held it against her body, looking at herself in the mirror. It was simple, with no cleavage, short sleeves and knee length. Nothing flashy, nothing special, but it was the best she had. She put it on slowly, adjusting the fabric at the waist, pulling the sleeves. The dress fit well, despite clearly being from a discount store. Marina put on her only low-heeled sandal, black and worn, and tried to look at herself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back wasn't dazzling. She wasn't the kind of woman who appeared in magazines or turned heads on the street, but she also wasn't that Marina who hid behind baggy clothes and messy hair anymore. There was an effort there. There was dignity. Marina took a deep breath, adjusted her glasses on her face, and picked up the old fabric bag she used every day. When she came down to the living room, Isabella was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, assessed Marina from top to bottom, and let out a muffled laugh. "Seriously, that's what you're wearing?" Marina gripped the bag strap, fighting the urge to go back to her room and lock herself in. "It's what I have." Isabella shook her head, going back to her phone. "Good luck. You're going to need it." Donna Lucia appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked at Marina and forced a smile. "You look presentable." Marina didn't respond. There was nothing to say. So Renato, sitting in the armchair, looked up from the newspaper and nodded. "Good luck, dear." At least he tried. Marina called a rideshare and waited on the sidewalk alone as the sun began to set and São Paulo's sky took on shades of orange and grey. When the car arrived, she got in the back seat, gave the address in Alphaville, and remained silent throughout the entire trip. The driver tried to make conversation but gave up when he realized Marina wasn't receptive. She looked out the window, watching the city pass by, buildings, billboards, bridges, traffic, and wondered for the 1,000th time what she was doing. When the car entered the luxury condominium in Alphaville, Marina felt her stomach turn. The streets were clean, tree-lined, silent. The mansions were huge, each one more impressive than the last. The car stopped in front of a black iron gate, and Marina took a deep breath. "Is this it?" The driver confirmed. She got out, thanked him, and stood on the sidewalk looking at the gate. On the other side, she could see part of the garden. Impeccable lawn, colourful flowers, decorative stones. Marina pressed the intercom. A male voice, polite, answered. "Yes? I'm Marina Azevedo. I'm here for dinner." There was a brief pause. "Ah, yes, Miss Azevedo. One moment." The gate began to open slowly with a soft metallic sound. Marina took a step forward, then another and another, until she was walking through the garden toward the front door. And as she walked, she remembered Isabella's words. "Imagine his face when Marina shows up." Marina closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and kept walking. She didn't know what was going to happen. But for the first time in her life, she was about to find out. The front door was made of solid wood, with hand-carved iron details. Marina stood in front of it for a few seconds, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Before she could ring the doorbell, the door opened smoothly, revealing a middle-aged man dressed in a discreet, impeccable suit. He had grey hair combed back and a kind expression on his face. "Good evening, Miss Azevedo. My name is Carlos. Welcome." His voice was calm, polite, without any trace of judgment or surprise. Marina let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. "Good evening. Thank you." Carlos stepped aside, making room for her to enter. "Please, come in. Mr. Rodrigo is waiting for you." Marina crossed the threshold and felt the gentle air conditioning touching her skin. The entrance hall was immense, with high ceilings, marble floors that reflected the light from crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. There were paintings on the walls, not cheap reproductions, but works that seemed original, with visible brushstrokes and vibrant colors. A wide staircase went up to the second floor, with a dark wood railing and iron details. Everything there screamed wealth, but in a silent, elegant way. It wasn't ostentation, it was good taste. Marina followed Carlos down a wide corridor, his steps silent on the floor, while hers echoed slightly. She tried not to look around too much, tried to seem natural, but it was impossible not to feel out of place. Her simple clothes, her old bag, her worn shoes, everything seemed to scream that she didn't belong there. Carlos, however, showed nothing but courtesy as he walked ahead. "Mr. Rodrigo asked that I take you to the library," Carlos said, stopping in front of two double doors of carved wood. "He usually receives important guests there." Marina swallowed hard. Important guests. She didn't feel important. She felt like an intruder. Carlos pushed the doors, opening them slowly, and what Marina saw on the other side made the air escape from her lungs. The library was the kind of place she had only seen in movies or magazine photos. The room was enormous, with 2 floors of dark wood shelves going from floor to ceiling, filled with books. Thousands of books. The colorful spines aligned perfectly, organized, cared for. A spiral iron staircase connected the ground floor to the mezzanine, where more shelves waited. There were brown leather armchairs strategically positioned near large windows that offered a view of the illuminated garden. An antique mahogany table occupied the center of the room, with a bronze lamp and some open books on it. The smell, that unmistakable smell of old paper, polished wood, and leather, filled Marina's lungs like a hug. She took a step inside, completely forgetting about Carlos, forgetting where she was, forgetting why she was there. Her eyes roamed the shelves, trying to absorb everything at once. Classic literature, philosophy, history, poetry. There were first editions, she could tell by the covers and bindings. There were books in other languages, French, Spanish, German. There was even an entire section dedicated to Brazilian authors, with Machado de Assis, Clarice Lispector, Guimarães Rosa. "My God," Marina whispered, not realizing she had spoken aloud. She approached one of the shelves, her fingers reaching out, almost touching the book spines, but stopping in the air, afraid of ruining something so precious. Is this real? It's real." The voice came from one of the armchairs near the window. Marina turned abruptly, her heart racing again. A man stood up, closing the book he was holding and placing it on the side table next to the armchair. Rodrigo Farias. He was taller than Marina expected, maybe 6'1" or 2. He wore a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, dark jeans, and was barefoot, a detail that strangely made Marina relax a bit. He didn't look like the untouchable millionaire from magazines. He looked human. His dark brown hair was slightly messy, as if he had run his hand through it a few times while reading. His eyes were dark, attentive, and there was no trace of mockery or disappointment when he looked at Marina. Just curiosity. "You like the library," he said, and it wasn't a question. Marina blinked, trying to organize her thoughts. Yes, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like this." Rodrigo took a few steps toward her, his hands in his pockets. "Most people who come in here look at the armchairs, the windows, the chandelier. You went straight for the books." There was something in his tone, a silent approval. Marina felt her face heat up. "Sorry, I work with books. It's hard not to notice." Rodrigo smiled, a small but genuine smile. "You don't need to apologize. It's refreshing." He moved a little closer, stopping beside Marina, looking at the same shelf she was admiring. "You work at a library, right? Your mother mentioned that." Marina nodded, still processing the fact that he didn't seem disappointed or surprised that she wasn't Isabella. "Yes, at the community library in Capão Redondo in the south side." Rodrigo turned his head, looking at her with renewed interest. "Capão Redondo? That's far, isn't it?" Marina hesitated. "It is. About 2 hours by bus, but it's worth it." "Why?" The question came quick, direct but weightless. Rodrigo seemed genuinely interested. Marina looked at him, trying to assess whether it was a rhetorical question or if he really wanted to know. His eyes were fixed on her, attentive. She decided to risk honesty, because that's where people need it most. Downtown, there's a library on every corner, every college, every mall. Out in the periphery, ours is the only one for miles around. For many children, it's the only safe place they have outside of home. For teenagers, it's an alternative to the streets. For adults, it's a chance to go back to school, to learn new things. I didn't want to work somewhere that already has everything. I wanted to work where it makes a difference." Rodrigo was silent for a few seconds, just looking at her. Marina began to feel uncomfortable, thinking she had said too much, that she had sounded pretentious or dramatic. But then he smiled again, this time wider. "Your family must be very proud of you." The phrase was like a punch to the stomach. Marina looked away, pretending interest in another book. "Not really." Rodrigo frowned, noticing the change in her tone. "Not really?" Marina shrugged, trying to seem casual. "They think I should have chosen something more prestigious. A library downtown, maybe. Something that would look better on a resume." "And you? What do you think?" Marina looked back at him, surprised by the question. No one had ever asked what she thought. "I think I made the right choice." Rodrigo nodded, satisfied. "Then that's what matters." He gestured to the armchairs near the window. "Do you want to sit, or would you rather keep exploring the library? I have all night." Marina felt something strange in her chest, something warm, unfamiliar. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't trying to impress her or assess if she was up to par. He was just present. Can I look a little more?" Her voice came out hesitant, almost shy. Rodrigo smiled. "Of course. Feel free. I'll ask Carlos to bring something for us to drink while you explore. Wine, juice, water. Water is great," Marina answered, still not believing this was happening. Rodrigo nodded and left the room, leaving the doors open. Marina was alone in the library, surrounded by thousands of stories, and for the first time since she left home that night, she allowed herself to breathe. She walked slowly between the shelves, her fingers finally touching the book spines. She passed by the poetry section and stopped when she saw an old edition of Fernando Pessoa. She carefully picked up the book, opening to the first page. The binding creaked slightly, and the smell of old paper rose to her. Marina closed her eyes, inhaling, and felt a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. When Rodrigo returned, carrying a tray with 2 bottles of water and 2 glasses, he found Marina sitting on the floor, cross-legged, leafing through a book of poems. She looked up, embarrassed. "Sorry, Rodrigo shook his head, smiling. "Don't apologize. This library was made to be used, not admired from afar." He placed the tray on the table and sat in the nearest armchair. "Did you find something interesting?" Marina showed him the book. "Fernando Pessoa, first edition, if I'm not mistaken." Rodrigo raised his eyebrows, impressed. "You have a good eye." Marina smiled, a small but real smile. "It's part of the job." Rodrigo poured water for both of them and handed a glass to her. "You know," he said, his tone becoming more serious, "when your mother called, I almost declined the invitation." Marina felt her stomach tighten again. Here it came, the disappointment, the rejection. But Rodrigo continued, "I had already met your sister before, at a charity event a few months ago. Let's just say the experience wasn't good." Marina blinked, surprised. Rodrigo took a sip of water and continued, "She tried to create a scandal when I didn't return her interest. Almost made up a story. It was unpleasant." Marina didn't know what to say. Isabella had never mentioned this, but it also wasn't hard to believe. "So why did you accept?" The question came out before she could think better of it. Rodrigo looked directly at her. "Because your mother mentioned that her other daughter was a librarian in the periphery. And I got curious. Curious to meet someone who chose to make a difference instead of seeking the spotlight." He paused. "Someone real." Marina felt her chest tighten, not with pain, but with something different, something she couldn't name. Rodrigo stood up, extending his hand to her. "Shall we have dinner? I'm sure you have many stories to tell about that library in Capão Redondo, and I'd love to hear them." Marina took his hand, and he helped her up. As they walked out of the library, Marina looked back one last time, at the shelves, at the books, at that place that seemed to have been taken from her dreams. And she thought, with a pang of hope she didn't dare name, that maybe this night wouldn't be the disaster she had imagined. Carlos guided them to a smaller, cozier room than the rest of the house. It wasn't the main dining room. Marina could glimpse in passing an enormous room with a long table for at least 20 people as they walked down the corridor, but rather an intimate space with large windows overlooking the back garden. The fine rain that had started to fall left the windows foggy, creating an almost dreamlike effect with the external lights illuminating the plants. The table was set for 2, with a white tablecloth, discreet candles, and china that seemed to have been chosen with care. There was no excess, just silent elegance. Rodrigo pulled out the chair for Marina, a gesture that left her momentarily paralyzed. No one had ever done that for her. She murmured a quiet thank you and sat down, nervously adjusting her dress. Rodrigo took his seat across from her, and Carlos appeared with a bottle of red wine, pouring it into crystal glasses before quietly withdrawing. Marina looked at the glass, then at Rodrigo, not knowing whether to start drinking or wait. "Do you drink wine?" Rodrigo asked, noticing the hesitation. Marina shook her head, honest. "Not much. Only at weddings, birthdays, those kinds of things." Rodrigo smiled. "That's fine. If you'd prefer something else, I can ask for it." Marina quickly shook her head. No, this is fine." She picked up the glass, took a small sip, and felt the bitter liquid go down her throat. It wasn't bad, just different. Carlos returned with the starters, a caprese salad with fresh tomatoes, buffalo mozzarella, and basil, drizzled with golden olive oil. Marina picked up her fork, but stared at the plate for a moment. It was too beautiful to eat. Rodrigo, noticing, began eating naturally, as if wanting to show there was no excessive formality there. Marina imitated him, and the flavor exploded in her mouth. Fresh, light, balanced. "So," Rodrigo began, after a few minutes of comfortable silence, Tell me more about your work. What exactly do you do at the library? Marina wiped her mouth with the napkin, grateful to have something concrete to talk about. I'm the head librarian. I organize the collection, help people find books, coordinate reading circles for children and teenagers, partner with schools in the area. Basically, I take care of the space and the people who visit. Rodrigo tilted his head, interested. Reading circle. How does that work? Marina felt her shoulders relax. This she knew how to talk about. Every Thursday afternoon, we meet with a group of teenagers. They choose a book, read it during the week, and then discuss it. In the beginning, it was hard. Many came only because their mothers made them, or because they had nowhere else to go after school. But gradually, they started to like it, to open up, to bring friends. Do you have any case that marked you? The question came softly, but loaded with genuine curiosity. Marina took another sip of wine, thinking, there's a girl, Julia. She started coming to the library about 3 years ago when she was 15. She was rebellious, fought with everyone, didn't want to know about anything. One day she picked up a book just because the cover was pretty. It was Cuarto de Despejo by Carolina Maria de Jesus. She read it and came back a week later wanting to talk. She said she had never seen anyone write about the life she knew. Marina paused, her voice becoming softer. Julia started attending the reading circle. She started writing too. Last year she finished high school and started a technical nursing course. She thanks me every time we meet, but I always tell her that she did the work. I just gave her the book. Rodrigo was silent for a moment, watching Marina with an expression she couldn't decipher. Do you realize the impact you had on her life? Marina looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. I was just doing my job. Rodrigo shook his head. No, you did much more than that. You gave her hope. You gave her possibility. That's not just work, Marina. Her name in his mouth sounded strange, not bad, just unexpected. She wasn't used to being seen like this, as someone who mattered. Carlos returned to clear the starter plates and serve the main course. Mushroom risotto with filet mignon in Madeira sauce. The smell was intoxicating. Marina waited for Rodrigo to start before picking up her fork, and when she tasted it, she had to hold back a sigh of satisfaction. It was, without a doubt, the best food she had ever experienced. You studied at USP, right? Rodrigo asked, cutting a piece of meat. Marina nodded. Yes, I did library science. I got a full scholarship based on my entrance exam performance. Rodrigo raised his eyebrows. Impressive. And why library science? It's not exactly the most popular major. Marina smiled, a bit embarrassed. I've always loved books, since I was a child. They were my refuge. When it came time to choose a major, I thought, what do I want to do with my life? And the answer was, be close to books and help other people fall in love with them too. Did your family support the decision? The question came casually, but Marina felt the weight behind it. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. They accepted it. It wasn't exactly what they expected, but they accepted it. Rodrigo frowned. What did they expect? Marina took another sip of wine, feeling the liquid courage go down her throat. I think they expected me to be more like my sister. Like your sister? Rodrigo put his fork on his plate, his attention completely focused on Marina. Isabella is a model. Beautiful, charismatic, popular. She's always been the center of attention. I've always been the other one. The one who studied. The one who stayed quiet. The one who didn't cause trouble. Rodrigo remained silent, letting her continue. Marina didn't know why she was saying all this. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the exhaustion of carrying everything alone. Or maybe it was because, for the first time, someone seemed genuinely interested in listening. When I chose to work in the periphery instead of pursuing something more prestigious, my mother was disappointed. She said I was wasting my potential, that I should think more carefully about my career. But I didn't want a career that would make me forget why I started. I wanted to make a real difference." Marina looked at Rodrigo, expecting to see pity or disinterest. But what she saw was respect. "That's brave," Rodrigo said, his voice firm. "Most people do the opposite. They choose the easier path, the one that gives more financial return, the one that impresses at dinner parties. You chose the difficult path because you believe in it. That's rare." Marina felt her eyes sting, but she blinked quickly, pushing away any possibility of tears. "My family doesn't see it that way." Rodrigo leaned slightly forward. "Then your family is wrong." The silence that followed was charged. Marina didn't know what to say. Rodrigo watched her with an intensity that made her feel vulnerable and, strangely, safe at the same time. He sighed, as if deciding whether or not to ask the next question. "Marina, can I ask you something?" She nodded, tense. "Why did you really agree to come here today?" The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Marina lowered her gaze to her plate, her fork suspended in the air. She could lie. She could say it was curiosity, that it was politeness, that it was anything but the truth. But something about that night, maybe Rodrigo's kindness, maybe the library, maybe the wine, made her choose honesty. "Because my sister refused." Her voice came out low but firm. Rodrigo said nothing, waiting. Marina took a deep breath and continued. "When my mother told us about the invitation, Isabella didn't want to come. She said she wasn't going to become some bored businessman's wife. And then she suggested, laughing, that they send the ugly sister instead, just to see your face when I showed up." Marina finally looked up, meeting Rodrigo's eyes. "I was sent as a joke." The expression on Rodrigo's face changed completely. The kindness gave way to something darker, anger, indignation. He clenched his fists on the table, his jaw tense. "They did that to you." Marina shrugged, trying to seem indifferent, but her voice trembled. "It's not the first time. I've always been the less interesting daughter, less beautiful, less everything. They make that very clear." Rodrigo took a deep breath, visibly trying to control his anger. "Marina, look at me." She obeyed, her eyes meeting his. "You're not less anything. And anyone who makes you feel that way doesn't deserve to be near you, doesn't deserve your loyalty, your love, nothing." His voice was low but loaded with conviction. "You're brave, intelligent, passionate about what you do. You're changing lives. And if your family can't see that, then the problem is theirs, not yours." Marina felt a tear roll down her face before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it with the napkin, embarrassed. "Sorry. I didn't mean to." Rodrigo reached his hand across the table, lightly touching hers. "Don't apologize. Never apologize for feeling." Marina looked at his hand on hers, large, warm, firm. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. "I almost didn't come," she confessed, her voice still choked. "I thought you'd laugh, that you'd send me away, that you'd confirm everything they've always said about me." Rodrigo gently squeezed her hand. "I would never do that. And you know why? Because the person who walked into my library today, who looked at the books before looking at me, who chose to work in the periphery because she believes in making a difference, that person is exactly who I hope to meet. And she's much, much more than any stupid joke your family tried to play." Marina let the tears fall, not trying to hide them this time. Rodrigo remained there, holding her hand, waiting. Not rushing, just present. And Marina felt, for the first time in her life, that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of being loved. After Marina composed herself, wiping her face with the napkin Rodrigo gently offered her, they continued dinner in a different kind of silence, no longer laden with tension, but with a mutual understanding that didn't need words. Carlos appeared discreetly to clear the plates and serve dessert. Petit gâteau with cream ice cream, the hot chocolate sauce dripping over the crispy shell. Marina tasted it and closed her eyes, savoring. It was sweet, comforting, almost therapeutic. Rodrigo watched her with a discreet smile, as if seeing something few people noticed. When Marina opened her eyes and caught him looking, she blushed slightly. "Sorry, it's just really good." He laughed softly. "You don't need to apologize for appreciating things. It's a rare quality." Marina tilted her head, curious. "Rare?" Rodrigo nodded, pushing his dessert plate aside and resting his elbows on the table, his fingers interlaced. "Most people who sit at this table don't notice the food. They don't notice the books. They don't notice anything beyond what all this can do for them." There was a subtle bitterness in his voice, something Marina recognized because she had felt it herself, the pain of being reduced to a single thing. "You care about the right things, Marina. And that's rare." Marina remained silent, processing the words. After a moment, she asked, hesitant, "Can I ask you a question?" Rodrigo nodded. "Of course." Marina chose her words carefully. "You said you had met my sister before, and that it wasn't a good experience. But even so, when my mother called, you accepted the invitation. Why? If you already knew what Isabella was like, why take the risk?" Rodrigo sighed, leaning back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the candle flickering between them. "Because your mother made a mistake." Marina frowned, confused. Rodrigo continued, choosing each word. "When she called, she tried to sell me the idea that Isabella was perfect, beautiful, famous, desired. But I already knew Isabella. I already knew that behind all that beauty there was, well, nothing I wanted near me." He paused as if reliving an unpleasant memory. "It was at a charity event, about 6 months ago. I was there representing the company, making donations, talking with organizers. Isabella was there too, covering the event for her social media. She approached me, was nice at first, asked for a photo. I accepted, no problem. But then she started insisting. She asked for my number, suggested we meet up. I declined, politely saying I was busy with work." Marina felt her stomach tighten. She knew her sister well enough to imagine what came next. "And she didn't accept the rejection?" Rodrigo shook his head. "No. She tried to create a scene, saying I had hit on her and was now pretending nothing had happened. Thank God there were cameras and witnesses. The story didn't go anywhere, but it was uncomfortable." Marina closed her eyes, embarrassed. "I'm sorry." Rodrigo raised his hand, interrupting her. "You have nothing to do with it. You don't need to apologize for her actions." Marina opened her eyes and Rodrigo continued. "When your mother called offering Isabella, I almost hung up right away. But then she mentioned you. She said she had another daughter, older, who worked as a librarian in a community on the south side, and something about that interested me." Marina blinked, surprised. "Interested? Why?" Rodrigo leaned forward, his voice becoming softer, more sincere. "Because I'm tired, Marina. Tired of meeting people who only see me as a walking wallet. Tired of dinners where the person across from me is calculating how much my house, my car, my company is worth. Tired of fake smiles and empty compliments." He paused, his eyes fixed on her. "When your mother mentioned that you chose to work in the periphery, that you turned down more prestigious opportunities to stay where you could make a difference, I thought, this is someone I need to meet, because this person isn't seeking the spotlight. She's seeking purpose. And purpose is something you can't buy with money." Marina felt her heart race. "But you didn't know if I was really like that. It could have been a lie from my mother." Rodrigo smiled, a tired but honest smile. "It could have been. But I had to try, because if I kept only meeting the type of person who approaches me out of interest, I was going to end up believing everyone is like that. And I don't want to believe that." Marina swallowed hard, trying to process everything. "So, you weren't expecting Isabella. You were expecting me?" Rodrigo nodded. Exactly. Your family thought they were playing a trick on me, sending the ugly sister. But actually, they delivered exactly what I was looking for. Someone real. Someone who knows the value of the things that matter. Marina felt her eyes sting again, but this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of something she couldn't name. Relief, perhaps, or recognition, or hope. I don't know what to say. Rodrigo reached his hand across the table, lightly touching hers again. You don't need to say anything. Just be yourself. That's all I ask. Marina looked at his hand on hers, and for the first time didn't feel like the lesser daughter. Didn't feel like the leftover sister. She felt seen, and that, she discovered, was more valuable than any compliment about appearance she never received. Can I tell you something? Rodrigo asked, breaking the silence. Marina nodded. He continued, his voice lower, almost confessional. I grew up with money. My father built Farias Tech from scratch, and when he died 5 years ago, I inherited everything. Company, mansions, investments, everything. And you know what happened? Marina shook her head. People changed, or rather I started to see who they really were. Rodrigo removed his hand, running it through his hair, messing it up even more. Friends I'd had for years suddenly started asking for favors. Ex-girlfriends who had disappeared reappeared, saying they had made a mistake. Women I'd never seen in my life started showing up at events I attended, by coincidence. Everyone wanted something. No one saw me. They saw the money, the company, the last name. But they didn't see me. Marina recognized that pain. It was different from hers, but it was pain all the same. It must be lonely. Rodrigo gave a humorless laugh. It is. Very. I have a mansion full of rooms and sleep alone every night. I have a library full of books and no one to talk about them with. I have everything money can buy, but I don't have anyone who looks at me and sees Rodrigo, not the heir to Farias Tech. Marina felt a deep connection forming between them. Two lonely people, each in their own way, each carrying the weight of not being seen for who they really were. Is that why you're doing this? Marina asked, her voice soft. Looking for a wife this way, so directly. Rodrigo sighed. My mother is sick. Cancer. She doesn't have much time, and her greatest wish is to see me happy, married, building a family. I tried the traditional way, going out, meeting people, opening up, but every time I ended up disappointed. He looked at Marina, vulnerable. So I thought, why not try a different way? Why not be direct about what I'm looking for? A partner, someone who understands that marriage isn't about appearances or status, but about building something real together. Someone who sees me and who I can see too. Marina remained silent, absorbing everything. And do you think I could be that person? Rodrigo smiled, a small but genuine smile. I don't know, Marina. We just met. But what I do know is that, for the first time in a long time, I'm sitting here talking with someone who didn't ask me how much my house costs, how much my company is worth, or where I spend my vacations. You asked me about books, about purpose, about things that matter, and that gives me hope. Marina felt her chest tighten. She wanted to believe in that. She wanted to believe that someone like Rodrigo, rich, handsome, successful, could really see value in her. But a part of her, that part shaped by years of rejection and comparisons, whispered that this was too good to be true. What if I disappoint you? The question came out before she could hold it back. Rodrigo tilted his head, confused. What do you mean? Marina looked away, her hands nervous in her lap. What if you discover I'm not as special as I seem, that I'm just ordinary, plain, that I have nothing interesting beyond my work? Rodrigo stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside Marina's chair, gently turning it so she would face him. Marina, listen to me. His voice was firm but kind. You're not ordinary. You're not plain. You're someone who chose to make a difference when you could have chosen the easier path. Someone who cares about children no one else sees. Someone who looks at a library and sees possibilities, not just books. That's not ordinary. That's extraordinary. Marina felt tears returning but didn't hold them back. Rodrigo took her hand, squeezing gently. "And if you still don't believe me, that's okay. I'll show you, every day if I have to, until you see in yourself what I already see." Marina looked at him. This man who, just hours ago, was a stranger, and who now held her hand as if she were something precious. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of being loved. Not despite who she was, but exactly because of who she was. The days following the dinner were different from anything Marina had experienced. Rodrigo didn't disappear, as she half expected he would. He didn't send a polite message saying it was nice to meet her and ending it there. Instead, he called. The next day, and the next, and the next. Long calls that started with, "How was your day?" and ended hours later with Marina lying in bed, the phone warm against her ear, a silly smile on her face she couldn't control. He asked about the library, about the book she was reading, about Julia and the other children in the reading circle, about So Carlos and his firm opinions on politics. And Marina, who had never had anyone genuinely interested in her life, discovered she loved sharing. Rodrigo, in turn, talked about tedious corporate meetings, difficult decisions at the company, about his sick mother, whom he visited every day at the private hospital. There was an intimacy growing between them, built word by word, laugh by laugh, comfortable silence by comfortable silence. The following Thursday, Rodrigo called with a different proposal. "Are you free on Saturday?" Marina was organizing books at the library, her phone trapped between her shoulder and ear. "I think so." "Why?" There was contained excitement in his voice. "I want to take you to see a place. It's outside the city. We can leave in the morning and come back at night. Are you up for it?" Marina hesitated for just a second. The part of her that was still afraid whispered caution, but the part that was beginning to trust, the part that was beginning to believe she deserved good things, spoke louder. "I'm up for it." On Saturday, Rodrigo showed up at the address Marina had sent. Not the apartment in Moema, but a corner 2 blocks away. She didn't want him to go through that situation. Didn't want Isabella or Donna Lucia to see him. Didn't want the comments, the giggles, the tension. Rodrigo parked the car, a dark sedan, elegant but discreet, and got out to open the door for Marina. She wore simple jeans, a white cotton blouse, and sneakers. She had left her hair down, and now that she was allowing herself to care a bit more, it fell nicely over her shoulders. Rodrigo smiled when he saw her. "You look beautiful." Marina blushed, getting in the car. "Thank you. You look good too." And he did. Rodrigo wore a grey long-sleeved shirt, rolled up to his elbows, jeans, and brown boots. There was something comforting about that casualness. He wasn't trying to impress, he was just being himself. They left São Paulo via the Bandeirantes highway, the city's chaotic traffic gradually giving way to greener, more open landscapes. Marina looked out the window, watching small towns pass by, simple houses, plantations, a sky bluer than what she saw every day. "Where are we going?" she asked, curious. Rodrigo kept his eyes on the road but smiled. "You'll see. It's a surprise." Marina rolled her eyes but smiled too. There was something adolescent and sweet about it. The anticipation, the surprise, the feeling of living something she had only seen in movies. They talked the entire trip about music. Rodrigo liked jazz, Marina preferred MPB. About movies, both loved Brazilian cinema classics. About childhood, Rodrigo grew up in expensive private schools, Marina in public school, but both had memories of feeling lonely, each in their own way. After almost 2 hours on the road, Rodrigo took an exit and entered a small countryside town in the interior of São Paulo. The streets were cobblestone, the houses colourful and low, with porches decorated with plants. There was a small square in the centre, with an old bandstand and leafy trees providing shade. Some children were playing tag, shouting and laughing. An elderly man was selling popsicles from a cart. There was a peace there that São Paulo didn't have. A slow, silent peace, almost suspended in time. Rodrigo parked in front of a small restaurant with a peeling yellow facade, with a hand-painted wooden sign, Marta's Corner. Marina looked at him, confused. "Is this it?" Rodrigo nodded, getting out of the car. "This is it." They entered, and the smell of homemade food, beans, rice, roasted meat, enveloped Marina like a hug. The place was simple, with wooden tables, checkered tablecloths, and rustic decoration. There were only 3 occupied tables. From behind the counter, a woman of about 60, short, wearing a floral apron with grey hair pulled into a bun, looked up and, upon seeing Rodrigo, her entire face lit up. "Rodrigo, my boy!" She came out from behind the counter with impressive agility for her age and ran to him, pulling him into a tight hug. Rodrigo laughed, returning the hug affectionately. "Hi, Dona Marta, I missed you." Dona Marta pulled back, holding his face between her hands, her eyes shining. "How long has it been, boy? You disappeared. I thought you'd forgotten about us." Rodrigo shook his head. "Never. I just got busy. But today I brought someone special." Dona Marta turned to Marina, and her smile got even wider. "And who is this beautiful young lady?" Marina, awkwardly, extended her hand. "Marina, nice to meet you." Dona Marta ignored the hand and pulled Marina into a hug too, squeezing tight. "Nice to meet you, nothing girl. Here we're family. Come, sit down. I'm going to prepare the best lunch you've ever eaten." She practically pushed them both to a table near the window, which overlooked the little square, and rushed back to the kitchen, shouting something to someone inside. Marina looked at Rodrigo, still processing. "She knows you well." Rodrigo smiled, a bit sheepish. "I come here from time to time, when I need to get out of the city, breathe." Marina tilted her head, curious. "And how did you find this place?" Before Rodrigo could answer, an elderly man with completely white hair and large, calloused hands appeared carrying a pitcher of fresh orange juice and 2 glasses. "Rodrigo, my boy!" He placed the pitcher on the table and shook Rodrigo's hand firmly. "So, João, how are you?" Rodrigo asked, standing to greet him. So João patted him on the back, affectionate. I'm good. And you?" "Working too much, I bet." Rodrigo laughed. "A bit." So João looked at Marina and winked. "And is this the girlfriend?" Marina choked on the juice she had just sipped. Rodrigo smiled, unfazed. "She's a very special friend." So João nodded, clearly not believing it, but respecting it. Good. If you need anything, just call. Your family here." When So João went back to the kitchen, Marina stared at Rodrigo. "Okay, now you need to tell me the story." Rodrigo sighed, settling into his chair. "I was coming back from a business meeting about 3 years ago. The car tire blew right at the entrance to town. I stopped here, asked for help. So João helped me change the tire, didn't want to charge anything. I offered money, but he refused. Said it wasn't about money, it was about helping your neighbor." Rodrigo paused, his eyes distant. "I came in here to eat something while I waited, and Dona Marta treated me like I was her grandson. We talked. They told me about the restaurant, about the difficulties, about the dream of keeping the place alive so their granddaughter could continue after them. I asked if I could help somehow. At first they refused, but I insisted." Marina felt her chest tighten. "What did you do?" Rodrigo looked away, almost embarrassed. "I paid off the restaurant's debts, renovated the kitchen, and when I found out their grandson had gotten into medical school but couldn't afford it, I offered a scholarship. He's in his 3rd year now." Marina was silent, looking at Rodrigo as if seeing him for the first time. "You did all that? And didn't tell anyone?" Rodrigo shrugged. "There's nothing to tell. I just helped. They would have done the same for me." Marina shook her head, her eyes welling up. No, Rodrigo. Most people wouldn't have done the same. Most would have changed the tire and left. You stayed. You cared. Rodrigo looked at her, vulnerable. That's why I brought you here. I wanted you to see who I am away from all that. Away from the money, the company, the expectations. Here, I'm just Rodrigo. Marina reached her hand across the table, touching his. I like this, Rodrigo. He smiled, intertwining his fingers with hers. I also like this Marina, the one who's not afraid to be real. Lunch was hearty and delicious. Roasted chicken, rice, tropero beans, farofa, vinaigrette. Donna Marta sat with them for a few minutes, telling stories about the town, asking about Marina, clearly approving of her presence. When they finally got up to leave, Donna Marta hugged them both again, whispering in Marina's ear, "Take care of him, girl. He has a heart of gold." After lunch, Rodrigo and Marina walked through the little square. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange, pink, and purple. The children had gone home, and the place was silent, peaceful. They sat on a bench under a tree, watching the first stars appear in the sky. Marina had never seen so many stars. In São Paulo, pollution hid most of them. But there, in the countryside, the sky seemed infinite, full of points of light. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Rodrigo looked at her, not at the sky. "It is." Marina felt his gaze and turned, meeting the dark eyes fixed on her. There was something different in the air, an expectation, a good tension. Rodrigo took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Marina, I need to tell you something." She held her breath. "What?" Rodrigo took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I know we just met. I know this might seem too fast, but I'm falling in love with you." Marina felt her heart race. Rodrigo continued, his voice soft but firm. "You reminded me that there are good people in the world, people who care, people who see beyond the superficial. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Marina felt tears streaming down, but didn't hold them back. "I'm falling in love with you too." The words came out trembling, but true. Rodrigo smiled, relieved, and pulled her closer. They kissed under the stars, a soft kiss, full of promise and hope. And for the first time, Marina believed that maybe, just maybe, she deserved a happy ending. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Marina's life. Rodrigo became a constant presence, not invasive, but comforting. He sent good morning messages before Marina's alarm even went off. He called during her lunch break, just to hear her voice. He showed up at the library at the end of her shift with flowers, always different, never cliché red roses, but daisies, sunflowers, lilies, each bouquet chosen with care. The children at the library loved it when he appeared, especially after he donated 3 new bookshelves and 200 children's books. Julia called him Marina's prince, and Marina pretended to be annoyed, but deep down she loved it. Gradually, Marina began to change. Not because Rodrigo asked, but because she wanted to. She bought contact lenses and this time had the patience to adapt. She discovered her eyes were bigger than she thought, more expressive. She started wearing a little makeup, just mascara and lipstick. Nothing excessive, but enough to enhance features she had always hidden. She began choosing clothes that flattered her body, blouses that cinched at the waist, pants that weren't too baggy. It wasn't vanity, it was self-care. It was, for the first time, looking in the mirror and not feeling shame. Donna Rosa, from the neighborhood salon, cried when Marina showed up asking for a more modern cut. "I always knew you were beautiful, girl. You just needed to believe it." Marina smiled, emotional. "I'm starting to believe it." And it was true. Each message from Rodrigo, each sincere compliment, each gesture of affection planted a seed of confidence Marina never knew could grow. She wasn't changing for him. She was changing for herself, and that made all the difference. But while Marina blossomed outside the home, inside the apartment in Moema, the atmosphere became increasingly heavy. Donna Lucia and Isabella noticed the change. It was impossible not to notice. Marina came home smiling, her phone constantly buzzing with messages, her gaze distant and happy. When they asked about Rodrigo, Marina gave vague answers. Everything's fine. We're getting to know each other. She had learned the hard way that sharing happiness with that family was like handing ammunition to the enemy. One night, Marina was in her room, changing after work, when Isabella entered without knocking. "So, you and the millionaire are still seeing each other?" The tone was casual, but there was venom in the undertones. Marina didn't look up as she folded her blouse. "Yes." Isabella sat on the bed, crossing her legs, her eyes scanning the room as if looking for something. "Has he given you anything? Jewelry, expensive clothes, money?" Marina finally looked at her sister, her stomach churning. "No, he's not like that." Isabella gave a dry little laugh. "Of course he is. All rich men are like that. They buy what they want, and when they get bored, they throw it away." Marina clenched her fists, fighting the anger beginning to rise. "Rodrigo isn't like that." Isabella stood up, walking to the door. Before leaving, she turned with a cruel smile. "Marina, do you really think a man like him is going to stay with you? He's having fun. When he gets tired, he'll look for someone on his level, someone beautiful, someone who isn't you." The door slammed. Marina stood still, breathing deeply, trying not to let the words sink in, but they sank. They always sank. At night, lying in bed, she picked up her phone and looked at Rodrigo's messages. The last one said, "I dreamed about you last night. You were reading to me in the library. I woke up smiling." Marina smiled too, but a part of her, that part shaped by years of rejection, whispered, "What if Isabella is right?" Family dinners became silent battlefields. Donna Lucia made passive-aggressive comments. "Marina, you've been fixing yourself up a lot lately. Don't you think you're overdoing it? We don't want Rodrigo to think you're trying too hard." Or, "Just don't delude yourself, dear. Men like that don't marry, well, ordinary women." So Renato tried to intervene sometimes, but his voice was weak, easily drowned out by the two women who dominated the house. Marina stopped having dinner with the family. She began eating in her room or at the library before going home. She stopped sharing details of her life. When Donna Lucia asked about Rodrigo, Marina responded in monosyllables. "Fine. Yes. No." She built walls, because it was the only way to protect what she was building with Rodrigo. But building walls hurts. And Marina was exhausted. One Friday night, Rodrigo took her to dinner at an elegant restaurant in Time. Marina wore a new dress, dark blue, simple but pretty, bought with her own salary. Rodrigo looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world. "You look stunning." Marina smiled, but something in her was tired. During dinner, Rodrigo noticed. "You're quiet today. Did something happen?" Marina hesitated. She didn't want to ruin the night. Didn't want him to know how toxic her family was. But Rodrigo took her hand across the table, squeezing gently. "Marina, you can trust me. What's bothering you?" And then, like a dam finally breaking, everything came out. Marina told him about the poisonous comments, about her mother and sister's disbelief, about the constant feeling that she was living a lie and that at any moment he would wake up and realize she wasn't enough. When she finished, she was crying. Rodrigo held both her hands, his eyes fixed on hers, steady. "Marina, listen to me. Your family is wrong. They're trying to sabotage your happiness because they can't stand seeing you shine. But you don't need their approval. You don't need them to believe in you. I believe, and you should believe too." Marina wiped her tears, sobbing. "What if they're right? What if you get tired of me?" Rodrigo stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her chair, right there, in the middle of the restaurant. Some customers looked curious, but he didn't care. "Marina Azevedo, I'm not going to get tired of you. I'm not here for fun. I'm here because you're the most incredible person I've ever met. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I'm with you, I feel at home." He cupped her face in his hands, wiping the tears with his thumbs. "Your family can try to bring you down as much as they want, but as long as I'm here, I'll remind you every day how much you're worth." Marina threw herself into his arms, crying, but this time with relief, with gratitude. People in the restaurant started applauding, thinking it was a marriage proposal. Rodrigo laughed, helping Marina stand, and the two left hand in hand, ignoring the stares. In the car, Marina finally said what she needed to say. "I think I need to move out." Rodrigo looked at her, serious. "Are you sure?" Marina nodded. "I can't take it anymore. They're destroying everything good I have. I need to get away." Rodrigo squeezed her hand. "Then let's look for a place for you. Something near the library. Something that's yours. And I'll help you with whatever you need." Marina shook her head. "I don't want your money, Rodrigo. I need to do this on my own." He smiled, proud. "Then I'll help in other ways. Looking, carrying boxes, assembling furniture. But you won't go through this alone. I'm here." And for the first time in weeks, Marina felt like everything would be okay. Not because Rodrigo was solving her problems, but because he was beside her while she solved them. And that, she discovered, was what real love meant. Marina found a studio apartment in Villa Maddalena, small but cozy, with a window overlooking a tree-lined street and rent that fit her tight budget. She had signed the contract on Monday and was planning to move by the weekend. She hadn't told her family yet. She knew there would be drama, shouting, accusations, but for the first time Marina was prepared to face it. She had Rodrigo by her side. She had the library team. She had, finally, herself. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Marina was organizing the reading circle when she saw Rodrigo entering through the library door. She smiled automatically, but the smile died when she saw the expression on his face. He was pale, tense, his jaw clenched. He walked quickly, like someone trying to control something about to explode. Marina excused herself from the children and went to him, her heart already racing. "Rodrigo, what happened?" He looked around, seeing the curious children, so Carlos reading in the corner, Julia organizing books on the shelves. "Can we talk outside?" His voice was controlled, but Marina heard the tension underneath. She nodded, her stomach churning. They went out to the small back garden of the library, a humble space with some wooden benches and plants Marina took care of in her spare time. As soon as the door closed, Rodrigo turned to her, running his hand through his hair, agitated. "Your mother and sister went to my office today." Marina felt her blood freeze. "What?" Rodrigo took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "They showed up unannounced, said they needed to talk to me urgently, about you." Marina felt her legs weaken. She leaned on one of the benches. "What did they say?" Rodrigo looked at her, and there was something in his eyes. Doubt, confusion, fear. And Marina recognized it. It was the look of someone who was beginning to question everything. "They said you made up the story about the ugly sister joke, that you manipulated everything from the beginning so I would feel sorry for you." Marina felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "That's not true. Rodrigo, He raised his hand, asking her to wait. "They brought proof. Screenshots of conversations you supposedly had with a friend, where you brag about fooling the millionaire. But they say you've done this before, that you have a history of approaching rich men." Marina felt the world collapse around her. "Rodrigo, that's a lie. I never—" He took his phone out of his pocket and showed her the images. There they were, screenshots of conversations, supposedly from Marina's WhatsApp, with someone identified as Carol, friend. The messages were horrible. "He believed the ugly sister story. Ha 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 ha, what a fool. I'm going to marry him and never have to work again. Rich men are so easy to manipulate." Marina looked at the images, incredulous. "Rodrigo, I never wrote that. I don't even have a friend named Carol. This was forged. You have to believe me." Rodrigo put his phone away. but didn't look at her. They also said you've done this before, that there are other men you tried to manipulate. They gave me names, addresses, everything. Marina shook her head, desperate. That doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? I work, Rodrigo. I have my own life. I don't need. Rodrigo finally looked at her, and there was hurt in his eyes. Marina, you live with your family in a cramped apartment. You work at a library that barely pays your bills. You were about to rent a tiny studio. From my point of view, you had every reason to want an easy way out. The words cut deeper than anything Isabella or Donna Lucia had ever said. Because they came from him, from the man she was beginning to love. From the man she thought saw her. Do you really believe that? Marina asked, her voice trembling. Do you believe I'm capable of doing something like that? Rodrigo looked away, and the silence was answer enough. Marina felt tears burn, but didn't let them fall. Not yet. Screenshots can be forged, Rodrigo. There are apps that do that. Anyone who wants to sabotage someone can create fake conversations. Rodrigo ran his hand over his face, exhausted. I know that. I know it's possible, but, Marina, I've been through this before. I've been deceived, manipulated, used. I thought you were different. I really thought so. But now, he paused, his voice breaking. Now I don't know what to think anymore. Marina took a step forward, taking his hand, but he gently pulled away, and that gesture hurt more than any word. Rodrigo, please. You know me. You know who I am. You've been to the library, met the children, seen my work. Do you really think I would make all this up just to manipulate you? Rodrigo looked at her, and there were tears in his eyes too. I don't know, Marina, and that's what's killing me. Because I want to believe you, I really do. But the last time I ignored the signs, believed someone against all evidence, I got badly hurt. And I don't know if I can go through that again. Marina felt something break inside her. So you need proof. You need to investigate my heart. If I say I didn't do anything, that I'm innocent, that's not enough. Rodrigo shook his head, visibly anguished. It's not about being enough or not. It's about, I need to be sure. I need to verify the facts, talk to the people they mentioned, understand what's true and what's a lie. Marina took a step back as if she'd been slapped. You're really going to do that? You're going to investigate whether or not I'm a con artist? Marina, please, try to understand. But she was already shaking her head, tears finally falling, uncontrolled. No, Rodrigo, you need to understand. I spent my whole life being diminished by my family, being called ugly, plain, inferior, and even so, I built a life, an honest life. I never lied to you, never hid who I am. And now you're saying you need to investigate whether I'm a decent person. Marina angrily wiped her tears. You know what that means? It means you don't trust me. It means that deep down you believe I'm capable of this. And if you believe that, then you don't really know me. You never did. Rodrigo reached out, trying to touch her arm, but Marina pulled away. No, I have one thing in this life, Rodrigo. One thing no one can take from me, my honesty, my dignity, and if even that isn't enough for you, then we really do live in different worlds. Marina turned to enter the library but stopped at the door, looking back one last time. You know where to find me when you decide whether you believe me or not. But know one thing, I'm not going to beg to be believed. I'm not going to humiliate myself proving I'm not the horrible person my family painted me to be. If you really know me, if you really saw me, then you already know the truth. And if you don't, then maybe we never had anything real. Marina entered the library and locked the door behind her. She leaned against the wood, her whole body shaking, tears falling freely now. Julia came running, alarmed. Marina, what happened? Marina shook her head, unable to speak. Julia hugged her, and Marina collapsed, sobbing against the shoulder of the girl she had helped years ago, and who now held her while her world crumbled. Outside, Rodrigo stood in the garden, watching the closed door, his own tears falling. He wanted to go back, wanted to say he believed her, that he knew she was innocent. But fear was stronger, the fear of being deceived again, the fear of trusting and being destroyed. And so, hating himself, Rodrigo turned and left, leaving Marina crying on the other side of the door, and taking with him any chance of fixing things in that moment. Marina didn't remember how she got home that night. The bus ride was a blur of contained tears, curious glances from strangers, and a pain in her chest that seemed like it would never pass. Julia had offered to go with her, but Marina refused. She needed to be alone, or maybe she needed to face what she knew was waiting for her at the apartment in Moima. When she opened the door, she found the scene exactly as she had imagined. Donna Lucia and Isabella were in the living room, an open champagne bottle on the coffee table, 2 full glasses, wide smiles on their faces. They were celebrating. Seu Renato wasn't there. He had probably gone out to avoid the confrontation, as he always did. Marina closed the door behind her, and the sound made the 2 women turn their heads. "Marina, you're here!" Donna Lucia stood up, her tone excessively animated. "Fake. Come, sit with us." Marina stood in the entrance hall, her bag hanging from her shoulder, her eyes red and swollen. "What are you celebrating?" Her voice came out low, but there was a firmness there that hadn't existed before. Isabella took a sip of champagne, her eyes shining with malice. "We saved you, Marina. We saved you from making the biggest mistake of your life." Marina felt anger rise, hot and visceral. "Saved? You destroyed my relationship. You lied, forged evidence, went after him at his office like 2... She stopped, breathing deeply, fighting not to scream. Donna Lucia approached, her tone becoming more serious, more condescending. "Marina, you're being dramatic. We did this for your own good. That man was going to use you and discard you. Men like him don't stay with women like you." "Women like me!" Marina repeated the words, letting them hang in the air like poison. "What exactly does that mean, Mother?" Donna Lucia sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a stubborn child. "Marina, you're a good girl, studious, hard-working, but you're not the type of woman a man like Rodrigo Farias looks for. He wanted someone beautiful, someone impressive. You're ordinary, and the sooner you accept that, the better." Marina felt each word like a stab, but this time something was different. The words didn't break her, because for the first time she saw clearly what was happening. It wasn't about her being ordinary. It was about 2 women who couldn't stand seeing her happy. "You forged the messages, didn't you?" Marina asked, her voice still controlled. Isabella shrugged, unconcerned. "It was easier than I thought. There's an app for everything these days." Marina closed her eyes, trying to process the coldness, the lack of remorse. "Do you know this could be a crime? Forgery, defamation?" Donna Lucia laughed, a short, humorless laugh. "Marina, stop it. You're not going to do anything. You never do anything. You're the good daughter, remember? The one who never causes problems." And there was so much truth in that Marina almost believed it. Almost. But then she remembered Rodrigo, how he looked at her as if she mattered. She remembered the children at the library, Julia, so Carlos. She remembered herself, the woman she was beginning to become. "Do you know why you did this?" Marina asked, opening her eyes and facing her mother and sister. "You didn't do this to protect me. You did it because you can't stand seeing me happy. Because as long as I was the ugly daughter, the plain one, you felt superior. But when I started to shine, when someone finally saw me and chose me, that threatened your fragile egos." Isabella slammed her glass on the table hard. "Oh, stop it, Marina. You're being ridiculous." But Marina didn't stop. "You know what's saddest, Isabella? You're beautiful, really beautiful. You could have used that beauty to do so much good in the world, but you chose to use it to hurt, to destroy, and that's what makes you ugly. Not on the outside, on the inside. Isabella stood up, her face red with anger. Who do you think you are to talk to me like that? Marina took a step forward, for the first time in her life not backing down. I'm someone who finally woke up. Someone who realized the problem was never me. It was you. It was the way you need to diminish others to feel big. Donna Lucia tried to intervene, her voice getting louder. Marina, you're being ungrateful. We raised you, gave you everything. Marina interrupted her, her voice firm and clear. You didn't give me everything. You gave me scraps. You gave me what was left after investing in Isabella, and I accepted it because I thought that was all I deserved. But it's not. I deserve much more. Marina turned and went to her room. She grabbed an old suitcase from under the bed and started throwing clothes inside, without care, without organization, just wanting to get out of there as quickly as possible. Donna Lucia appeared at the door, alarmed. What are you doing? Marina kept packing. I'm leaving. I should have done this a long time ago. Donna Lucia gave a nervous laugh. Leaving? To where? You don't have money, Marina. You have nowhere to go. Marina stopped, looking at her mother. I rented a studio in Villa Maddalena. Small, but it's mine. I signed the contract this week. I was going to tell you, but now I see I don't owe you any explanations. Donna Lucia turned pale. You won't be able to support yourself alone. You'll come crawling back in a week. Marina closed the suitcase and put it on the floor. Maybe, but at least I'll have tried. I'll have lived in my own space, with my own rules, without anyone telling me how inferior I am. She grabbed the suitcase and walked to the door. Isabella blocked the way, her arms crossed. You can't leave like this. We're family. Marina looked at her, and there was pity in her eyes. Family takes care of each other. Family supports. Family doesn't destroy. You're not my family, not anymore. Isabella, not knowing what to say, got out of the way. Marina walked past her mother who stood in the hallway, and left the apartment without looking back. The night was cold when Marina went down the street, dragging the suitcase. She didn't have money for a taxi, and the bus would be complicated with luggage. She was about to call Julia when she heard a familiar voice. Marina! She turned and saw Julia running down the sidewalk, followed by São Carlos, Donna Lucia, the other Donna Lucia, the one with the packed lunches from the library, and 3 more people who attended the reading circle. What are you doing here? Marina asked, confused. Julia arrived first, out of breath. Did you think I was going to let you deal with this alone? I knew you were going to do this today, so I called backup. São Carlos gently took Marina's suitcase. Come on, girl. We already rented a van. We're going to take you to your new home and help you get everything set up. Marina felt her eyes fill with tears, but this time they were good tears. The van was old and noisy, but it was full of love. During the trip to Villa Maddalena, they talked, made jokes, told stories. When they arrived at the studio, they climbed the 3 flights of stairs together, carrying the suitcase, boxes with things Julia had brought, sheets, towels, some kitchen utensils. The apartment was tiny. Bedroom, living room, and kitchen were practically one room, but it had a large window that let in light, a small bookshelf where Marina could put her books, and above all, it was hers. They spent the night organizing. Donna Lucia from the packed lunches brought food, bread, cheese, coffee. São Carlos helped assemble a folding table someone had donated. Julia hung floral curtains that had belonged to her grandmother. When they finished, it was past midnight. They sat on the floor of the empty apartment, exhausted but happy, eating bread with cheese and laughing at silly jokes. Thank you, Marina said, her voice choked. Thank you for being here. For being my real family. Julia rested her head on Marina's shoulder. You were always there for us when we needed you. Now it's our turn. São Carlos nodded in agreement. You're not alone, Marina. You never were. And in that moment, surrounded by those people who chose to love her without expecting anything in return, Marina realized something fundamental. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about who stays when everything falls apart. When everyone left and Marina was alone in the silent apartment, she lay on the air mattress Julia had lent her, looking at the cracked ceiling. She thought about Rodrigo. Was he still investigating? Had he discovered the truth? Part of her wanted to call, explain, beg him to believe her. But another part, the part that was being born, strong and firm, knew she couldn't do that. If Rodrigo really loved her, if he really knew her, he would discover the truth on his own, and he would come back, or not. And if he didn't, Marina would survive, because she had survived worse things. She had survived years of humiliation, rejection, invisibility. And now, for the first time, she had a place that was only hers. She had people who truly loved her, and she had herself, and that, she discovered, was more than enough. Marina closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she slept deeply, without fear, without doubt, just in peace. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of absolute silence. Marina created a routine in the studio in Villa Maddalena. She woke up, had coffee alone at the folding table while looking out the window, took the bus to the library, worked, came back, had something simple for dinner, and read until late. It was a small life, but it was hers. And there was a peace in that she had never experienced before. Julia visited almost every day, always bringing something. A cake she had made, a plant to brighten the space, just company. So Carlos showed up on weekends to check if everything was okay, but Marina knew he just wanted to make sure she wasn't too alone. Donna Lucia, from the packed lunches, sent food at least twice a week, and gradually Marina was building not just a life, but a home. But there was an emptiness, a space that Rodrigo occupied and that was now painfully empty. Marina hadn't blocked his number, but he hadn't called either. No messages, no sign. And Marina had made peace with that, or at least was trying to. If he really believed she was capable of those things, then there was nothing she could do. Love couldn't exist without trust, and trust couldn't be begged for. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Marina was in the back garden of the library, watering the plants, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and froze. Rodrigo was standing there, a few meters away, his hands in his pockets. He looked different. Thinner, deep, dark circles, his hair messier than usual. He looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Marina turned off the hose, her heart racing, but said nothing. She just waited. Rodrigo took a step forward, hesitant. "Hi." His voice was hoarse, tired. Marina crossed her arms, protecting herself. "Hi." Silence. Rodrigo ran his hand through his hair, the nervous gesture Marina already knew so well. I need to talk to you. Please." Marina wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to ask why it took so long, but she kept her voice steady. "Then talk." Rodrigo took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I was an idiot, a coward, and I came here to apologize." Marina said nothing, just kept looking at him, waiting. Rodrigo continued, the words coming out rushed, as if he had been holding them in for too long. "After that day, I was lost. I wanted to believe you, Marina. I really did. But fear was stronger. So I did what I said I would do. I investigated." Marina felt her stomach churn. "And?" Rodrigo took another step forward. "And I discovered everything was a lie. Everything." He took a folder from the car parked nearby and came back, opening it and showing documents. "I hired a private detective. We traced the origin of the messages. They were from an editing app, created on Isabella's phone. The screenshots were assembled word by word to look real." Marina felt her legs weaken, but she stayed firm. Rodrigo continued, turning the pages. "The men your mother mentioned, the supposed rich men you supposedly hunted, Two of them had never heard of you. The third one doesn't even exist. It was a made-up name. Everything, absolutely everything, was a lie created by your mother and sister to separate us. Rodrigo closed the folder, his eyes finally meeting hers. Marina, I'm sorry. I should have trusted you from the beginning. I should have believed what my heart was telling me instead of letting fear take control. But I failed. I failed you, and I failed myself. Marina felt tears burn but didn't let them fall. Not yet. It took you 3 weeks to find that out. Rodrigo shook his head. I found out in the first week. Marina blinked, confused. Then why didn't you come sooner? Rodrigo looked at the ground, embarrassed. Because I was ashamed, afraid you wouldn't forgive me. That I had destroyed everything irreparably. Julia showed up at my office 2 days ago, called me an idiot, and told me that if I didn't come talk to you, she was going to hit me. And she was right. Despite everything, Marina almost smiled, imagining Julia doing that. But the pain was still too present. Rodrigo, you didn't trust me. When I needed you most to believe, you chose to doubt. Rodrigo took another step, now very close to her. I know, and I have no excuse. But I need you to know something. I love you. I love you in a way that scares me, that makes me want to be better. And I understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if you want to move on without me, but I needed to come here, look you in the eyes, and tell you I'm sorry, and that you were right. Marina frowned. Right about what? Rodrigo smiled, a sad smile. About us living in different worlds, not because you're ordinary and I'm rich, like your family wanted you to believe, but because you're brave and I'm a coward. You trust until proven otherwise. I doubt until proven otherwise. You face things head on. I run away. He paused. But I want to learn. I want to learn to trust like you trust. To be brave like you are, if you give me a chance. Marina closed her eyes, tears finally falling. When she opened them, Rodrigo was kneeling on the garden ground, his pants getting dirty with soil, his hands extended toward her. Marina Azevedo, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. Not because I think I have the right, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Because you made me believe there are still good people in the world, and I was an idiot to question whether you were one of them. Marina looked at him, this man who had entered her life like a hurricane, who had made her feel seen for the first time, who had failed when she needed him most, but who was now there, vulnerable, asking for a second chance. And Marina realized something important. She didn't need him to be complete. She was already complete alone. But she wanted him. She wanted to build something together. She wanted to try again, but differently. Get up, she said, her voice soft. Rodrigo obeyed, uncertain. Marina took a step forward, looking directly into his eyes. I still love you. Even after everything, I still love you. But I'm not going back to being that Marina who accepted scraps. If we're going to try again, it has to be as equals. You need to trust me, even when fear screams otherwise. And I need to know that next time something like this happens, you'll choose me, not your insecurities, not your past. Me. Rodrigo took her hands, squeezing hard. I promise, I won't be perfect, Marina. I'll be afraid sometimes, I'll doubt, because that's how I was shaped. But I'll choose you every day. I'll choose to trust, choose to believe, choose to fight for what we have, because you're worth every effort. Marina felt the last piece of resistance crumble. She threw herself into his arms, and Rodrigo held her as if he would never let go. I missed you, she whispered against his chest. Every day, every second. Rodrigo kissed the top of her head. Me too. My house felt empty without you. My life felt empty without you. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, crying, healing. When they finally separated, Rodrigo wiped the tears from Marina's face with his thumbs, smiling. You moved. Marina smiled too, her eyes still red. I did. I have a studio in Villa Maddalena, small, but it's mine. Rodrigo nodded, proud. You left. You actually did it. Marina shrugged. I had to. For me. Rodrigo cupped her face in his hands. I love you so much, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right decision, giving me a second chance. Marina smiled, finally allowing herself to believe again. Then you better start now. And they kissed, there in the back garden of the library, surrounded by plants and books and the promise of a new beginning. It wasn't an ending, it was a new start. And this time, built on stronger foundations, honesty, trust, and the certainty that together they could face anything. 6 months had passed since that day in the library garden. 6 months of rebuilding, learning, mutual growth. Rodrigo kept his promise. Every day he chose to trust. When fear whispered doubts, he took a deep breath and chose Marina. And Marina, in turn, learned that being loved didn't mean losing her independence. She continued in the studio in Villa Maddalena, despite Rodrigo offering 1,000 times for her to move to the mansion. I need my own space, she explained, and he understood. But they spent weekends together, alternating between the small apartment and the big house, discovering that true love wasn't about where you were, but who you were with. The relationship with Donna Lucia and Isabella remained broken. There were attempts at reconciliation, unanswered calls, messages Marina deleted without reading, once when Donna Lucia showed up at the library, and Julia, protective as a lioness, sent her away. Rodrigo, true to his word, made it clear that any future contact would depend on a sincere, public apology, accompanied by real actions. So far, nothing had come, and Marina was at peace with that. She had discovered that forgiveness didn't mean forced reconciliation. It meant freeing herself from the weight of carrying the pain. It was a rainy Saturday in August when Rodrigo showed up at the library with a mysterious smile. I need you to come with me. Marina looked at him suspicious. Now? I'm in the middle of inventory. Rodrigo took the clipboard from her hands and placed it on the table. The inventory can wait. This can't. Marina rolled her eyes but smiled. She grabbed her jacket and followed him to the car. During the trip, she tried to get information. Where are we going? Surprise. At least give me a hint. No. Marina crossed her arms, pretending irritation, but inside she was excited. They didn't go to the mansion in Alphaville. Instead, Rodrigo parked in front of the library, but something was different. The back garden, which had always been simple and discreet, was now transformed. Fairy lights hung in the trees created a magical effect even under the fine rain. Flowers of all kinds decorated the space: daisies, sunflowers, white roses. There were small tables scattered around with white tablecloths and candles protected in glass lanterns. And people. So many people. Marina got out of the car, her mouth open. Julia was there, wearing a pretty dress with a huge smile on her face. So Carlos in a suit. She had never seen him in a suit, waving emotionally. Donna Lucia from the packed lunches, drying tears. Donna Rosa from the salon with her hair done up. Children from the reading circle, dressed in their best clothes, teachers from partner schools, library staff, even Sir Juan and Donna Marta from the countryside had come. Everyone who mattered was there. Rodrigo. What? Marina began, but he took her hand, intertwining their fingers. Come. He guided her to the center of the garden, where a small, improvised stage had been set up. Rodrigo climbed up, pulling Marina with him, and grabbed a microphone that was on a side table. The buzz of conversation ceased, and all eyes turned to them. Marina felt her heart race, not understanding what was happening. Rodrigo cleared his throat, clearly nervous but smiling. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know some came from far away, others cancelled commitments, but I needed everyone to be present for this moment. He looked at Marina, and there was so much love in his eyes that she felt her own eyes sting. A few months ago, I met a woman who completely changed my life, but before I talk about her, I need to talk about me. Rodrigo took a deep breath. I spent most of my life believing that people only approached me because of my money, my last name, what I could offer, and in many cases I was right. But that belief made me distrustful, closed off, unable to see goodness when it was right in front of me. And then Marina appeared. He squeezed her hand. She didn't seek me out. She was sent as a cruel joke by her own family, but when she walked into my library and looked at the books with more interest than she looked at me, I knew I had found something rare, someone real. The audience was in absolute silence, some people already discreetly wiping tears. Rodrigo continued, his voice becoming more emotional. Marina taught me what true love is. It's not about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about showing up every day. It's about choosing to trust even when fear screams otherwise. It's about building something together, brick by brick, word by word, gesture by gesture. And I failed her. When she needed me most, I doubted, but she gave me a second chance. And I intend to spend the rest of my life deserving that chance. Rodrigo let go of Marina's hand and got off the stage. She was confused for a second, but then he knelt, there in front of everyone, on the wet grass of the garden. Marina brought her hand to her mouth, her eyes overflowing. "Marina Azevedo," Rodrigo said, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. "You taught me that true wealth isn't in bank accounts or mansions. It's in the lives we touch, the differences we make. You dedicated your life to giving hope to children no one else saw, and you gave me hope when I thought there was none left." He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring, not ostentatious but beautiful, with a simple stone that shone softly under the lights. "I'm not asking you to marry me as a millionaire businessman. I'm asking you as the man you helped find his purpose, as someone who wants to spend the rest of his life by your side, building something that matters. Marina, will you marry me?" Marina was crying openly now, tears falling uncontrollably. She looked around, at Julia, who was waving encouragingly, at Seo Carlos, who was wiping his own eyes, at all those people who had become her true family. And then she looked back at Rodrigo, kneeling, vulnerable, waiting. "Yes," she whispered. And then, louder, so everyone could hear, "Yes, I accept." The garden exploded in applause, shouts, whistles. Rodrigo stood up, putting the ring on Marina's finger with trembling hands, and pulled her into a deep kiss, full of promise. When they separated, both laughing and crying at the same time, Rodrigo went back to the microphone. "Wait, there's more." Marina wiped her face, confused. "More?" Rodrigo smiled, picking up some papers from the table. "Marina, you once said you wanted to work where it makes a difference, that you chose the periphery because that's where people needed it most. So I thought, what if we could multiply that?" He showed the papers to her and the audience. "I created a foundation, the Marina Azevedo Foundation for Community Libraries. The goal is to build and maintain libraries in underserved communities throughout Brazil. Not just buildings with books, but spaces with programming, reading circles, partnerships with schools, everything you do here but on a larger scale." Marina covered her mouth, sobbing. Rodrigo continued, his eyes shining. "And I want you to be the director, to guide the project with your experience, your sensitivity, your passion. Because no one understands the transformative power of a library better than you." Marina couldn't speak. She just nodded, crying while Rodrigo hugged her. "We're going to do this together," he whispered in her ear. "We're going to change lives. We're going to create hope. And we're going to do it as partners in everything." The party that followed was simple but perfect. There was no expensive champagne or fancy food. There was homemade cake made by Donna Marta, snacks prepared by the mothers of the library children, music playing on a borrowed speaker. But there was love. So much love that it filled every corner of that garden. Julia pulled Marina aside, her eyes still red. "You deserve this. You deserve all of this and more." Marina hugged the girl she had helped years ago and who was now one of her best friends. "We deserve it, all of us. You, me, all the girls who grew up thinking they weren't enough." Julia smiled. "Look how far we've come." And Marina looked around, at the illuminated garden, at the people she loved, at Rodrigo talking animatedly with So Carlos about plans for the foundation, and realized she had come much further than she ever dared to dream. At the end of the night, when the rain had stopped and stars were beginning to appear in the sky, Rodrigo and Marina were alone in the garden. He pulled her into a slow dance, even without music, just swaying gently under the fairy lights. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice low. Marina rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. "I am. For the first time in my life, I'm completely happy." "What about your mother and Isabella?" Rodrigo asked, cautious. Marina sighed. "If they want to be part of this, of my life, they know what they need to do. A sincere apology, real behavior change. If it comes, I'll consider it. If it doesn't," she looked up, meeting his eyes, "I already have a family, one that chose me, that loves me, that believes in me, and that's more than enough." Rodrigo kissed her forehead. "You're amazing, you know that." Marina smiled, finally believing those words. "I'm learning to see that." They continued dancing, surrounded by the books Marina loved, by the people who loved her back, and by the promise of a future built not on appearances or status, but on purpose and true love. And as they danced, Marina thought about the girl she had been, the one who hid behind thick glasses and baggy clothes, who believed she was the ugly sister, who thought her role in the world was to disappear. And she looked at the woman she had become, strong, loved, with a purpose that went beyond herself. The journey had been painful, full of rejection and doubt, but every scar, every tear, every moment of pain had shaped who she was now. Marina was no longer the invisible sister. She was no longer the daughter without shine. She was Marina Azevedo, librarian, foundation director, future wife, and above all, the protagonist of her own story. And that story, she knew now, was just beginning. Marina Azevedo spent her whole life believing she was invisible, that her place in the world was in the shadows, quiet, small, accepting the scraps they offered her. But what she discovered throughout this painful and beautiful journey was that it was never about being seen by others. It was always about seeing herself, about recognizing in the foggy mirror reflection not the ugly sister they tried to make her, but the strong, generous and brave woman who was always there, waiting to bloom. And when she finally let the light in, when she chose to believe she deserved love, respect, happiness,